think the purpose here is, in today's day and age, kind of how is poker ambassadorship, headliners versus micro-influencers, how is it kind of infecting the industry?
That's really good, Tom. So we talked before when we first met, and you made a very good point about how there's so much opportunity for expansion for the micro-influence and for the poker players that they don't naturally see themselves. So your organization and your fantastic work helps bring these people into the next generation of household names. Is there any immediate stories or any anecdotes you can give us where you've seen surprise success with certain people?
Yeah, absolutely. So for context, one of the businesses I own that we are sponsoring here tonight is Above the Felt. We're a leading marketing and talent agency. We work with some of the top poker professionals, content creators, influencers in the industry. And our job is like a sports agency that didn't totally exist in poker before a few years ago, right? So think about what sports agents do for players. They, on their behalf, will seek out endorsement opportunities, appearance opportunities, marketing opportunities to monetize their influence. In poker, we have come into an age now where so many organizations in the industry and out of the industry didn't totally realize the power that some of these poker players and influencers had in terms of bringing brand awareness to their business or helping drive actual revenue growth for their business. And there are a few examples I'll give to your question. So in the poker industry, what I find is brands either want one of two things when working with an influencer. They want to work with that influencer to help increase the credibility of their brand. So an example of that might be, okay, BetMGM, they want to be taken very seriously. They want one of the best poker players in the world to represent their brand, to use their name, image, likeness. They don't really care too much about the content side of it. So they choose to work with a Darren Elias that brings them all those things, right? Then you have some other companies like WPT Global, Poker Stars, others who they have brands that people know across the globe, and they might not need to work with an ambassador to help them with brand exposure, but they might want to work with somebody who can help them bring them new players. So an example of that might be working with like the poker vlogger of the year, Jamin Burton, right? Or Ashley, or these content creators who are also poker players. Maybe not poker champions like a Jeremy Osmus or a Darren Elias, but they are content creators where literally hundreds of thousands of people consume their content. And most of them are poker players. That's an audience now where these organizations can partner with that influencer to drive new players, right? And it's very specific to the goals. That's within the industry. And then you have folks like Matt Berkey, right? One of the highest stakes cash game players in the world. Not only is he one of the best cash game players in the world, he's also got the award-winning Only Friends podcast. So he's also a content creator. Mm-hmm. And some organizations will say, hey, look, this gives me an opportunity to have brand exposure and help drive actual revenue growth. So I'd like to work with Matt. So it really depends. Out of the industry is a very difficult landscape. Because one, whether it's a European organization or a North American organization, so many companies outside of poker still connect poker with gambling. And a lot of them don't have the authority to make business decisions to partner with gambling companies, right? So we spend a lot of time trying to educate people that poker is not gambling. Poker players are not gamblers, right? This is a strategic game. A poker player has a hell of a lot more in common with a professional golfer than they do someone who's just playing blackjack or the slots, right? This is an education that is continual. It's one of the reasons we produced that documentary Dreamers a few years ago.
I was just going to actually come to that.
And it did work pretty well with outside organizations to the point where I remember Lexus was doing everyone knows the brand Lexus, right? They were doing some kind of special top performer trip. And it was in Las Vegas. And, they said, well, we've never partnered with a gambling company before, but we might be interested in having one of the people from your talent roster come and speak to the team about the commonality between business strategy and poker strategy, right? I look at that as a huge opportunity. Microsoft asked us the same thing. And it was so hard to get approval within those organizations. Maria Konnikova, best-selling author, poker champion with Microsoft, Matt Berkey, obviously, we talked about him with Lexus. And it came down to one of the decision makers just had to truly understand they were partnering with a credible company, the Above the Felt agency, with a credible poker player, where their name, image, likeness would align with their brand and not bring their brand down. And through that, when we actually got the opportunity to speak to these outside industry organizations about the parallels between poker and business strategy, it was eye-opening. But those opportunities are few and far in between. So I'm thankful we have those opportunities, but it is a constant business development approach to try and get those opportunities. And then people don't truly get it until they get it, right? And it's on us now to take those types of things that the poker influencers have done and get it out there so people know that we can add so much more value as poker players outside of the industry to help brands grow, to help speak into appearances and connect poker strategy with business strategy. So it's an ongoing effort, but it's one I believe, we can kind of break the walls down.
Thank you very much, Tom. Something came to mind when you were speaking there in the earlier panel. You and I have both worked for multiple different organizations over the years in different capacities. Have you, like I, seen the same sort of mistakes or the same sort of voids of experience and opportunities throughout those different operators? Do you come in both your consultancy and with your two fantastic ventures, do you come into the exact same repeat problems?
Yeah, it was a lot more prevalent 5 years ago, but slowly turning the corner today. So many companies in the industry, out of the industry, they put too much value on traditional marketing tactics to drive new customer acquisition or to drive repeat business, right? If, let's say, a company has $1 million budget for marketing, still to this day, I am shocked how many companies have like 75, 65% of that budget still towards traditional marketing. It's still that way. And I think it's a common mistake, because when you look at those traditional marketing vehicles, they might have worked in the early 2000s. They might have worked in the mid 2000s. Nowadays, what's working? It's influencer marketing, it's digital marketing, and a combination of the two. What's working better than both of those is experiential marketing. So I think a lot of companies have made the mistake where Above the Felt might reach out to them. Let's say it's a beer brand, right? And we're trying to say, hey, look, Bud Light, we would love for you to work with Chris Moneymaker, right? Chris Moneymaker started the poker boom. He's one of the most recognizable faces in the world. And we'd like to work with you in terms of him representing your brand in certain aspects. We'd like you to be sponsored, with Chris, where you can wear your patch, you can talk about your brand on interviews, you can be part of the Moneymaker tour. There's a whole circle of available obligations that players can do, which we can talk about. And the common response is, we just don't have that in our budget. We just don't have that in our budget, right? And when I dig deeper into it, it's because a lot of the budgets are still spent on billboards or this or that. And I try and tell people, like, man, for the price you pay for 1 month of a billboard, you can literally get 1 month of marketing and promotion from some of the top poker players in the world. And that's actually going to drive your business right away. But again, very tough conversation to have. Typically, people get it or they don't. And you really need somebody that loves poker in that corporation as a decision maker to want to get the actual yes.
Okay. Well, that's the commonality, I think, across both launching this event ourselves and we'll find across the week, and you would know that I've found it years. Poker players are few and far between in regards to the larger population, especially in the business environment, even though there's so many transferable skills we can learn from poker into business. They're so few and far between. Has anyone any questions for Mr. Wheaton? Yes.
Regarding sponsorships, I always had a dream that at some point poker could become a sport like tennis or something else, where there are sponsors driving a lot of the prices, but not maybe not the prices, but at least to not have any rake. You know, is that something you think would be possible?
This is something it's a great question. So think about professional golf, right? You have some of the best golfers in the world who are playing some of the best, most prestigious poker tournaments in the world. Where does that prize money come from? Does it come from the golfers buying into the tournament with their own money? Nope. It comes from the sponsors who recognize the value of that golf tournament and being associated with it from a brand standpoint because of the players and because of the organization, the PGA, right? Now, we don't have like a PGA in poker, right? We have a bunch of separate companies. But then you look at it from the player standpoint, and different golfers can be sponsored by different brands because they believe that that golfer represents what their brand's culture is. In poker, we are still in the infancy of people realizing the value that a player will bring to their brand, that the thought of an organization saying, we're going to sponsor this poker tournament and we're going to give $50,000 to it, and we're going to call it the Chevrolet poker tournament, the Ford poker tournament at the X resort, and it's going to, and not only are we going to sponsor the tournament, we're going to make it a free roll, and the most popular poker players in the world are going to play there. For them to really get that value, we need a case study. And we don't have a ton of case studies, if not any case studies. But that is a vision I would love to be able to help lead for this industry. I think it takes intentional action between myself and others in the industry that are involved in this in some capacity, and just a hell of a lot of business development. You'd have to reach out to hundreds of organizations with a value proposition for it, help them understand if you're asking for $100,000 for this, what value they're going to get back. You have to put the weight of here's the value you're going to get from for your brand, for brand awareness. Here's the value you're going to get for actual new customers, you know? And I think we just have to continue grinding to try and work it out. But I'm glad you asked that question because it's something I've thought about a lot. It's not something I have focused on too intently. Maybe I will for 2025 and see if we can't put something together and try and get that first actual case study of that PGA Tour style tournament that's sponsored by a huge brand and try and bring something like that to poker. That would be one hell of a vision and one hell of a goal.
I'm looking forward to that. Is there anyone else, please? Okay, Tom, any questions from yourself?
No, this was real quick. I know we could go into
sorry.
a lot. Okay,
My dearest apologies.
First of all, I resonate with what you say because I used to play poker myself and I didn't know what I was good at until I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So I got when I had my first startup business, then they knew me, so they wanted like give me money and invest in me. So I totally get it. My second question is, my question is, when you have this agency, do you recruit people or do people come to you? How do you find the talent?
Yeah, great question. So it was very much a startup, and I know I only have a couple minutes, so let me just go through this real briefly. One, we started with the core four. It was people I had relationships with that I knew, and maybe they didn't see it in themselves, knew could do this and do it well. So the first person I called was Jamie Kerstetter, obviously one of the leading ladies in poker. Great social media presence, absolutely likable, loves the game, has a passion for the game. She was the first person I called. Matt Berkey was the next for very similar reasons. Great at also connecting business with poker. Then Darren Elias was the next, who never saw this in himself, but now has turned into one of the biggest brand ambassadors for one of the biggest companies in the game, and is really taking it on and loves being a leader for the industry as a player and now as an ambassador. And then obviously Chris Moneymaker, because he's Chris Moneymaker, right? Everyone knows Chris. From that point on, I would love to say it was really strategic, but it wasn't. It was like, you know what? I got to know somebody. I thought they might have value for themselves, for the agency, and I'd have a chat with them. Now we're at a point where we give people the ability to connect with us through our website if they're interested in being part of the agency. And then also, like, if there is somebody in the world of poker that I think would be a great addition to the team or be able to add value to companies in the industry, I'll give them a shout. But that's where we're at in terms of recruitment. Great question. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. Any final thoughts?
No, hey, anybody that wants to talk about the world of brand ambassadorship, ambassadors, influencers, hit me up. I'm here all week and happy to have the conversation.
Thank you very much. For everyone who's unaware, Tom and the Faded Spade booth is outside. I want to thank a genuinely delightful man. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, everybody.